Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Way You Are with Vince the Vampire, the podcast where a vampire tries to discover what it means to be human. On today's episode, I am joined by Ohio University student Victoria Ross. Hello, Victoria.
Hi! It's so nice to see you. Like you said, I am an Ohio University student. I'm studying marketing where I'm minoring in music. And I like long walks on the beach and wine, pretty much.
And as always, I am joined by our wonderful DJ, Greg the Goblin.
Heyo!
Alright, let's get started. So, what is something you do in your free time?
Oh, I bake. I own a bakery, actually. Would you mind if I plugged it?
No, not at all. Go right ahead.
So I have a small business, of course, the bakery, and it's been going on for about 4 years. I run it through out of my home, and I work usually around the holidays. I take 100 plus orders a year with an assortment of goods, cupcakes, cakes, pies, macarons, anything to that extent.
Oh, that sounds lovely. Kinda made me hungry if I have to be honest. Oh, let me get that.
Hi, did somebody say they was hungry?
Ugh. Hello, Harry.
Hey there, sweet thing. Did you want yourself a taco? 'Cause by the way you was talking, you're pretty darn hungry.
No, I'm actually good, thank you. For our listeners at home, Harry is a werewolf, though, if I am being honest, I don't think he's ever actually been human.
You're darn tootin'.
Look, we are kind of busy right now.
So what are y'all up to? What's all this about?
It's a podcast.
Greg!
Well, darn, Gray, didn't see you there. You're being as quiet as a mouse pissing on cotton. So, a podcast? I've always wanted to be famous. Could I be on the podcast? Maybe plug my tacos?
Sorry, but we do not allow advertisements too.
What do you mean? We just had one. We could have another one.
Greg, shush! Oh my god!
Well, I own Locos Tacos, best taco truck this side of the Mississippi. We got tacos, walk-in or otherwise. Maybe a mouthful, but it's a lot to taco about.
Alright, we get it, Harry, we get it.
Well, I'll leave your fellers to your business. Just remember to stop by anytime and get yourself a hangerin'. Hell, if you need me, bye Vince, bye Greg, bye woman whose name I don't know. Take care now.
Good lord.
Sorry, Vince.
It's fine, as long as he does not show up again. So pesty. Anyway, let's move on. So, if you feel comfortable sharing, what is a scary dream you've had?
A scary dream I had. Well, I've had my fair share of nightmares and such, but something really interesting is I have sleep paralysis, which, to clarify, can be caused by a lot of things. It can be caused by anxiety, lack of sleep, depression, things like that. So a lot of people can have it. But the experiences you have in them are unforgettable. I had to have been about 15 or 16 during my first big episode. So I was laying in bed and my eyes shot open and I was straight on my back. I couldn't lift my fingers and I couldn't wiggle my toes. It was like I was glued down to my bed. And at the time, I would sleep with my door open. And I looked at my doorway and there was nothing there, but I still couldn't move. So I laid there and I stared at the ceiling for a while, and I looked at my door again, and there was a man standing in my doorway. This man had no legs. He was just hovering in the air, and he had this suit on and this hat, And when I hear people talking about sleep paralysis, it's always a faceless person when they see it. But I remember just the excruciating details in his face. It was incredibly eerie, with no life behind the eyes, just staring at me. And I stared back. There was nothing I could do. I couldn't move. So I laid there for what felt like hours, and then the scariest thing I've ever witnessed was him just floating into the other room.
So you've seen this figure multiple times.
No, just that one time was in there. Did I make it sound like it was
Okay,
more?
yeah, I was just clarifying.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've only seen him once.
Do you still have sleep paralysis?
I definitely notice the sleep paralysis kicking in if I'm not getting my full 8 hours of sleep every night. I have, of my fair share of experiences, that was just my creepiest. Sometimes there's this girl that will stand in the corner of my room. That's also rather rare, but the most frequent, and I get this about every time, is it feels like my bed has levitated and is shaking, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm hovering in the air, shaking rapidly, and I get that one probably about every month, and it's so scary. And honestly, it's gotten to the point where it's just pure annoying.
How often do you have sleep paralysis?
So it really just depends on what I'm doing with my life. Again, so during finals week and midterms week, I'm prone to have it more due to a lack of sleep. But over the summer, when I am sleeping pretty often and pretty regularly, then I don't get them as much.
Did that affect you in any way?
Yes. I became super paranoid all the time that there was a ghost in my house trying to kill me and my family. So this was years ago. This had to be about 6 years ago. So this was after the man, and I would tell my mom to be careful and stuff, and then she would flip out because she's super religious, and she's like, "Why are you seeing floating men?" And I would salt the ledges of our doors, and I'd hang crucifixes in the home. It was looking back, I feel a little silly, but it was really scary then.
So where do you get this salt pile, this paranormal information? Where do you get that from?
It is probably due to the fact that I grew up super religious. That's probably where I got all that from.
Okay, so those are religious beliefs?
Yes, my aunt practices paganry, while the rest of my family is extremely Christian, so I get the salt from protecting from spirits from my aunt, and the crucifixes from my Christian side of my family.
Have you ever thought you had a sleep paralysis hallucination, but it was actually real? You know? I mean, that is probably a stupid question, but I thought I'd ask anyway, just to see.
That is not a stupid question. That's really hard. I feel like once you get into... I've always been a really spiritual person. I always feel like the wall between us and the other side is way thinner than we believe. So, I don't know. For some people, maybe you believe the sleep paralysis apparitions are otherworldly creatures trying to tell us things, or you could be a man of science telling me that it's my lack of sleep or my mental health, but any way that you approach it, it's so creepy.
When did you first have sleep paralysis? As in, how old were you when you first had it?
How old was I? So this would have been when I first moved into my new home. So I had to be 10 years old. And I remember seeing, if you watch any ghost shows or listen to ghost stories, you know what these are, but I would see these orbs, just kind of dancing around. And I remember not being able to move and just staring up at my ceiling and watching these little balls of light, dance around. And it would slowly progress. I would have the orbs, and then I would see, shadows of people, and then it turned into the man, and then we also have the woman, and the bed started to shake and levitate. So yeah, it just slowly progressed.
Do you think that ghost shows have influenced these visions in a way? You know, Ghost Adventures on True TV or Travel Channel or whatever. The reception in my lair isn't that great, so it's hard to get cable.
Absolutely, yes, 100%. So, since I do believe that this is sleep paralysis, it's really similar to dreaming. And you dream about things that you like in real life, you don't like in real life. You dream of things that you have seen previously. So let's say I'm obsessing over a certain character in a movie, and then boom, that next night I have a dream and that person's in it. I believe that's completely plausible, that a lot of those apparitions and orbs were made up of things that I've seen in my conscious state from those spooky shows. I've always been a horror fanatic, so I wouldn't be surprised. But it's kind of weird because every account of sleep paralysis that you listen to, you only hear about scary things. You never hear somebody talking about a leprechaun and a unicorn jumping around in their room. So I would be interested in learning why they tap into the dark part of your imagination.
Aside from sleeping, have you ever seen something scary while awake?
I am so happy that you asked, Spence. I have. So, it was Friday night in the middle of December, and I'm driving around, joyriding with some of my college friends, and we're just having a good old time, and my one friend is telling us about a legend from their hometown. Every hometown has their ghost, like the Headless Horseman, Bloody Mary, things like that. So, my one friend, in her hometown, there was a witch. So, the witch was burned at stake when she was tried and was buried in the local cemetery. And in the cemetery, there's this giant tombstone. I don't know what else to call it. It looks like a pyramid of sorts, but on it there is written a curse, and if you read it out loud, or if you even read all of it in your head, you will be cursed by the witch. And it's said that when you leave, there will be an entity that follows you. So we're of course like, oh yeah, we're gonna go see this witch. So we start driving and we get up to the cemetery. And I remember when we parked the car and opened the doors, just the worst feeling in the world overcame my body. And I'm a bit of a thrill seeker. I've been to graveyards and abandoned like buildings and creepy places like that, and I've never felt so sick to my stomach. So we're walking around this graveyard trying to find like an odd shaped tombstone, and we come across this weird hexagonal towering tombstone. It was so odd, and so we're like, that has to be it. So we walk up, and the first thing we notice is all along the tombstones there are pennies and quarters, flowers, offerings. And so we read the tombstone and we immediately had to stop because it said, "Here lies," and then the witch's name. And then upon this there's a curse, and we're like, we need to stop reading this or we're going to be cursed. So we're like, let's get out of here as soon as we can. So we thank the spirits, and we began back to our car, and the feeling is getting worse. We are all running to our car at this point. So we get in the car, and we get out of the cemetery, and it looks like we're free. And we're driving down the road, and my friend slams on her brakes, and a deer just casually limps out on his back right leg into the road, and stops, and it turns its whole body towards us and stares at the car, and then picked up its left front leg and started limping towards us. And I look at my friend and I was like, "You need to drive." And she's like, "No, it's just a deer, it's in trouble." And I wish I could have taken a picture because it had the body of a deer, but it didn't move like an animal, and it had like these human eyes. It was horrifying. And I'm like, you need to drive. You need to drive. And we start speeding away, and we turn around, and this deer is flying towards our car, just hauling ass to our car, just running, and we are speeding all the way home, and that is the scariest thing that has ever happened to me.
Now, I am not an expert, but that does not exactly sound like an ordinary animal to me.
That deer, if that was a deer, I owed an apology for not stopping and calling the sheriff's department about his hurt little legs. But I've never seen. I've been a country girl my whole life. My family's hunted. I've seen my fair share of deer in my field, and usually, when you get near it, they usually don't stop and turn their whole body towards you and start walking towards you.
Yeah.
It was rather odd.
Do you have any theories about what that might have been?
Now, we had a number of them. So, my friend that was driving and I are both part of the Blackfoot Indian tribe. And within Native American culture, there are a few creatures that we believe it could have been. It could have been a knot deer, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's not quite a deer. It's a deer with some spiritual qualities and entities inside of it. It could have been a skinwalker pretending to be a forest creature, and we think that's why it didn't quite move like an animal. Or it could be a Wendigo, which I am going to get in so much trouble by my fellow Blackfoot Indians for saying that, because it is a very taboo word to say out loud.
Am I allowed to say it?
I wouldn't.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's said that if you say the word out loud, then the creature will be able to get in contact with you. So if you hear your name being called in the middle of the night, just close your eyes and look the other way.
Do you remember what it said on the grave?
If you look up, and I will let you guys look this up because I don't want that bad juju on me. But if you look up like I know her town was near Columbus, maybe it was like Jefferson or something. If you look up like Columbus witch tales and stuff, cemetery witch in Columbus, you'll be able to find the full curse online, as one of my friends had tried to find it. It lists everything that says on the witch's tombstone on there, but I do not recommend or condone reading it.
Do you think that experience was an enjoyable one?
Absolutely. Getting a chance to experience I don't know, a wrinkle in the folds of reality is my best way to say it. A thin wall between us and otherworldly beings. It's really cool to see how big and how unexplored this world is. The crazy things you get to experience in life. The wonderful, scary, crazy things that in that moment you think you're gonna piss your pants and scream and cry to your mom, you will look back on in weeks and realize I'm living my life. There's not a single thing I would have done different in any of these stories.
Well, I have to say, this was very frightening, but also very entertaining. I think we should end our episode now. This has been The They You Are with Vince the Vampire, the podcast where a vampire tries to discover what it means to be human. Thanks for listening. Now, Victoria, what kind of ice cream would you like?
Honestly, Vince, I think I'm more in the mood for a taco.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go. Bye, Vince. Thanks for having me.
Vince, I don't,
Greg. What the actual fuck?
This has been a Life Crew Studios production.